Mr. President, the Republican convention is in 3 days. We need a vice president. A huge decision. I like Marco Rubio. Sir, you want a fighter. You want Vivek. Vivek's smart, but maybe too smart. It's time, Donald. Do what you promised. Say the name. You know what? I got it. J.D. Vance will be the vice president. Wait, who? Isn't that the guy who called you America's Hitler in 2016? Yeah, well, he apologized. And look, it's not like JD has been working for that guy Peter Thiel with all those crazy ideas since 2016. And it's also not like Peter just casually wrote a $15 million check to put him in the Senate. And it's definitely not like Peter personally introduced me to JD at Mar-a-Lago like a proud dad. And it's certainly not like Peter is sitting in this room behind the couch right now listening to every word I'm saying. He obviously had nothing to do with this. It was all me. Or was it? Did Peter Thiel really just install his own protege into one of the most powerful jobs on Earth? And if so, to do what? To understand this, you will have to understand the story of Peter Thiel, a 57-year-old chess-obsessed billionaire that most Americans have never heard of, who, according to the Washington Post, personally lobbied Donald Trump to make that pick. But picking the vice president of the United States was just the most recent move in a plan Peter Thiel had written down 16 years earlier. And what was this plan? End American democracy. This is the story of a man who has spent 25 years quietly building the machine to do exactly that. We are going to look at his worldview, his war chest, his surveillance company, and his endgame. And by the end of it, you will see exactly what he's going to do next, and I promise you, you will not like it. Hey buddy, is this Swakopmund? Yes sir, welcome to Swakopmund. Thanks. There's a hotel that way, the beach is that way, and some very nice currywurst with sauerkraut that way. Are you alright, sir? What do you mean? I'm giving you directions. That German town was real. Its name, Swakopmund, was real. The Hitler's birthday sign was real. It was celebrated openly. The greetings were real. And in 1976, the New York Times sent a reporter there and described it as more German than Germany. You probably understand why. The 9-year-old boy named Peter Thiel lived in that town. His father, Klaus Thiel, was a mining engineer. The mine Klaus ran was called Rossing, just outside Swakopmund. The Rossing mine produced uranium, and the uranium from the Rossing mine went, almost entirely, to the apartheid South African government's secret nuclear weapons program, the whole purpose of which was to make sure that if the world ever tried to force South Africa to end apartheid, South Africa would have nuclear weapons of its own and would simply never have to. Inside the mine compound, the white managers, like the Thiels, had a country club, a brand new dental clinic, and a school with a fence around it. The black laborers lived in a segregated work camp on the other side of that fence, and they were never told what they were mining. The only clue was that the white employees handed out the paychecks from behind a sheet of glass to protect themselves from the uranium radiation, protection that was never extended to the black workers. An advocacy group later reported that some of those workers were dying like flies. Peter Thiel later said that what he took away from that experience was a distaste for uniformity and regimentation. But guess what? He was talking about the school uniforms, not the apartheid, not the uranium, not the salutes, the uniforms. The lessons a normal child takes from growing up white inside an apartheid uranium mining town is that the system was monstrous, and that democracy might be a good way of stopping such a system from ever happening again. The lesson Peter Thiel took was the exact opposite one. He looked at apartheid and he saw a small group of powerful people who had figured out how to keep the powerless from outvoting them. And this takeaway, more or less, was, these people are onto something. In 1977, the Thiels moved to California. By the age of 13, Peter was a top 10 ranked chess player for his age in the entire United States. He had a sticker on his chessboard that read, "Born to Win." When he lost a game, he swept the pieces off the board with his hand. Then he went to Stanford, and at Stanford, he read 3 books that essentially became his operating system for the rest of his life. The first was a novelist named Ayn Rand, who taught him that productive people are heroes and everyone else is basically a parasite. The second was an economist named Murray Rothbard, who taught him that democracy is mathematically doomed because in any system where 51% of people can vote things away from the other 49, the 49 will always lose. And the third was a French theorist named René Girard, who taught him that human societies do not actually want progress. What they really want is a scapegoat, and democracies in particular will always end up scapegoating the most successful person in the room, which, in Peter Thiel's reading, meant people like Peter Thiel. By the time he graduated from Stanford in 1992, he was not a businessman with strong political opinions. He was a fully formed anti-democratic philosopher who needed to make a lot of money. Because in America, money is the only thing that can buy you the kind of exit from democracy he had already decided he wanted. And to build that exit, he was going to need a war chest. A worldview is worthless without money, so in 1998, Peter Thiel co-founded a little online payments company. 2 years later, in 2000, it merged with another little online payments company owned by a man named Elon Musk. The merger lasted about 5 months. Honey, hold on 1 second. This is Elon, CEO of PayPal. Hi, Elon, it's Peter. Peter, buddy, just got upgraded to first class on the honeymoon. Best decision ever. Elon, the board just voted. You're not the CEO of PayPal anymore. What? I know. And honestly, it gets a little worse. Worse? They made me the new CEO. Peter, what the hell is going on? I know. It is the worst, Elon. It's now up to me to make all the important decisions, to use my influence, and no one can stop me. I hate it. Trust me, I'm barely holding it together. Peter, what the... Anyway, have a great honeymoon. Bye. Peter Thiel tricked the board of PayPal into becoming the CEO while Elon Musk was away on his honeymoon. As Musk later commented, that's the problem with vacations. They really can be detrimental to your career. In 2002, eBay bought PayPal for $1.5 billion, and Peter Thiel personally walked away with about $55 million. Decent money, not yet a fortune. But the real value of PayPal wasn't the money, it was the address book. The leadership group became known as the PayPal Mafia, and they went on to fund and build basically every major Silicon Valley company of the next 20 years. One of them, David Sachs, is now Donald Trump's official AI and crypto czar inside the White House. And in August of 2004, Peter Thiel used that address book to write the single most important check of his life, a $500,000 check for 10% of Facebook. That $500,000 check eventually paid Peter Thiel back more than $1 billion. By the age of 36, Peter Thiel had a $1 billion war chest, a private network of Silicon Valley's most powerful operators, and a fully formed worldview about why democracy needed to end, which only left one question: how would he execute his plan? On May 21, 2003, 2 years after 9/11, and 6 months before Mark Zuckerberg even started Facebook, Peter Thiel co-founded a company called Palantir, and the name of the company is the first clue. The word Palantir comes from The Lord of the Rings. A Palantir is a magical seeing stone that you can use to watch things happening very far away. And the specific Palantir that Peter Thiel named his company after is the one that the evil wizard Sauron uses to spy on Middle-earth. Try to sink that in. He named his surveillance company after the evil wizard's spy stone. The pitch for Palantir, though, was brilliant. After 9/11, the US government was sitting on enormous mountains of data. Phone records, travel records, bank records, visa records. They had no way to actually use any of it. Palantir software stitches all of that data together onto one single screen, so an investigator can look at one person and see everything the government knows about them in one place. So how do you start a company like that? You take the seed money from the CIA. So Bobby, you came in today because you feel overwhelmed? Yes, ma'am. After 9/11, the president asked me to keep track of every American citizen. We're talking about their names, height, and even how many times they poop per day. Bobby, that sounds so exhausting. It really is. I cannot sleep at night. Well, Bobby, you're in luck. A new prescription drug just hit the market. A drug? It only costs $2 million. What is it? Just one little piece of software, Bobby. Every phone call, every email, every search of every American, all on one single peaceful screen. Take it! Take all of it! The CIA has a venture capital arm. It is called In-Q-Tel, and it really did write Palantir a $2 million check in 2003. From that day forward, the Palantir customer list read like the table of contents of a conspiracy thriller. The FBI, the NSA, the Pentagon, the IRS, and ICE, which used Palantir software during the first Trump administration to identify and deport people. The CEO of Palantir is a man named Alex Karp. Karp was once asked on the record whether his company had been involved in the killing of Osama bin Laden. His answer was, and this is a direct quote, "There's a 2/3 chance, depending on the country involved, that somehow my company was involved." That is not a normal answer to a normal question. By 2025, Palantir is worth more than $200 billion. And when the second Trump administration starts consolidating every federal agency's data, every immigration record, every tax record, every government database in the entire country into one single searchable platform, the platform they choose is Palantir. Peter Thiel built the all-seeing eye, and then the government handed it the keys. Now he had the worldview. Now he had the money. Now he had the eye. Now it was time for the endgame. In 2016, Peter Thiel hired a young Yale Law School graduate named J.D. Vance to work at his venture capital firm in San Francisco. Vance was 28 years old. He had just published a best-selling memoir called Hillbilly Elegy about growing up poor in Appalachia. He was sharp, well-spoken, ambitious, and, most importantly to Peter Thiel, he came from a part of America that Silicon Valley billionaires almost never come from. He could speak the language of working-class voters in a way Peter Thiel never could in a million years. In Thiel's eyes, Vance wasn't just a smart hire. Vance was a future candidate. So Thiel began building him into one. In 2019, Thiel set Vance up with his own venture capital fund to give him the wealth, the network, and the public profile that any serious political candidate in America needs. But why? Why would Peter Thiel spend nearly a decade quietly grooming one specific young man into a politician? Because J.D. Vance was the vehicle for an idea Peter Thiel had written down in a magazine essay 15 years earlier. In April of 2009, Peter Thiel published an essay in a libertarian magazine called Cato Unbound. The essay was titled, "The Education of a Libertarian," and the first sentence that matters is, and I am quoting Peter Thiel directly here, "I no longer believe that freedom and democracy are compatible." He goes on in the same essay to blame this on two specific groups of voters, welfare recipients and women, and then he writes the line that becomes the mission statement for the rest of his life. The mission, he writes, is to find an escape from politics in all its forms. The essay lists 3 possible escapes: cyberspace, go online and build something the government can't touch; outer space, more specifically, which is why he has been quietly bankrolling people who want to colonize it; and what he calls seasteading, a small group of rich libertarians building floating cities in international waters where no government has any jurisdiction over them. Between 2009 and around 2015, all 3 of those options ran into the same problem. They are extremely hard. So the plan quietly shifted. If you cannot escape democracy, the next best thing is to capture it from the inside and dismantle the parts you do not like. And J.D. Vance was the man Peter Thiel had been building this entire time to do exactly that. In 2021, on a podcast called Jack Murphy Live, J.D. Vance was asked what one piece of advice he would give Donald Trump. His answer was, "Fire every single mid-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state. Replace them all with our people, and when the courts try to stop you, ignore them." That is not a Republican policy position. That is the literal escape from politics in all its forms from the 2009 Peter Thiel essay, being read aloud into a microphone by the man Peter Thiel was about to spend the rest of the decade putting into power. That same year, in 2021, Peter Thiel personally introduced J.D. Vance to Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. The following year, Thiel wrote a $15 million check to Vance's Senate campaign, at the time the largest single check any one human being had ever written to a Senate primary campaign in American history. Vance won the seat, and in July of 2024, Donald Trump picked the man Peter Thiel had been building for nearly a decade to be Vice President of the United States, a decision the Washington Post later reported Peter Thiel had personally lobbied for. But the strangest execution of the 2009 essay isn't happening in Washington at all. Remember the floating libertarian city Peter Thiel said in 2009 should be built in international waters where no government has jurisdiction? It exists. It's not in the ocean, it's on a small island off the coast of Honduras called Roatan. It is called Prospera, and it is backed by a venture capital fund whose investors include Peter Thiel. It has its own legal system, its own courts, its own tax code, its own immigration policy. It is, in every functional sense, a private country sitting on Honduran land. And the Hondurans, the actual citizens of Honduras, never voted for any of it. The current government of Honduras is right now in international arbitration, trying to revoke Prospera's special status. They are arguing reasonably that you cannot just sell a piece of a country to a private company. The arbitration is ongoing. The plan from the 2009 essay is not a fantasy anymore. It is a working roadmap, and Peter Thiel is, conservatively, about halfway through it. So if Peter Thiel is halfway through the plan from his 2009 essay, the only useful question left is, what is the other half? What is he gonna do next? The honest answer is, you can already see it. Because once you understand the worldview and the playbook, the next three moves become almost obvious. The first move is already happening in front of us. Palantir, the surveillance company from Chapter 3, is going to become the default data layer underneath every new federal artificial intelligence initiative for the rest of this decade. Because once you own where the federal data lives, you eventually own everything that gets built on top of it. The eye sees, and then the eye decides. The second move is the one most people aren't watching for. Donald Trump is 79 years old and constitutionally term limited, which means in 2028, there will be a new Republican nominee for President of the United States. The structural favorite for that nomination is J.D. Vance, the man Peter Thiel built. And if Vance wins in 2028, the program he was already reading aloud on that 2021 podcast, Fire the Bureaucracy, Ignore the Courts, stops being a podcast theory and becomes the actual operating policy of the United States executive branch, without any of Donald Trump's chaos to distract us from it. The third move is the one that should probably scare you the most. In 2023, Donald Trump signed a campaign promise to build what he called freedom cities on federal American land. Private charter cities with their own laws, their own taxes, their own legal systems. The people now actively lobbying for that program to actually happen are the same operators behind Prospera in Honduras. Which means that Peter Thiel's libertarian city, the one from the 2009 essay, might be coming to a piece of American soil near you, with its own laws, its own courts, and a population that did not vote for any of it. Democracy would be gone, just like he wanted it.